Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'll begin here with just a little bit of Iran, not much, just a little bit, and then I want to get into the Clinton depositions because they were interesting, and I told you I'd play some audio from it when they became available, and they, of course, are available, and were making the rounds all last night, and rightfully so. I immediately stopped what I was watching, clicked over, and watched probably 4 hours plus of the Hillary Clinton one. I haven't watched any, as I'm talking to you now, of the Bill Clinton one, other than, of course, seeing some clips, and then a few other education-related things, and then we should wrap it up. But I, of course, have some audio to play throughout this. Let me start here. Excuse me. One of the interesting parts, again, as you've heard me say before, that all war is deception, and deception exists in all warfare. In moments like this, it can be overwhelming because, as I said in the last episode, you can see two sort of rivaling sides. There's the we are MAGA and we didn't want war and what are you doing and this isn't what we asked for. And then there's the crowd that's even on the right side of things politically, just like the one I just described, and they'll say, see, we told you so. We told you he was going to get us into wars. We told you he's Zion Don, all of that stuff. What if they're both wrong? I'm just asking the question and just posing that question, that what if they're both wrong? I would encourage people to listen to the Promethean Action gals over again on Promethean Action. They have a YouTube channel where they post their videos. They're on X. And they bring the receipts, certainly from a historic aspect, right into the current state of affairs. And what happened, of course, many, many, many years ago, is that Iran was just Iran. They had their own culture. They had their own way of life. They're arguably one of the oldest civilizations that has existed. But of course, like many civilizations, unfortunately, they were co-opted. And then they became a CIA Mossad playground. I think, again, one of the many things that's taking place here is you're seeing the end of the deep state. You're seeing the murder and killing of the deep state. Now, I don't like it when any innocent life is lost, and if that's happened, then that's beyond terrible and that's unfortunate. But again, this is about world peace, I think, in the end. I think this is about no more wars. I think this is about cutting off supply chains and cutting off funding routes, and a number of other things. Again, there's a China connection to Iran. There's plenty of deep state, again, interagency government affiliations with Iran and the people who are actually running the country. And just like Iran, I should say, and just like any country, the government does not really represent the people. They typically don't. They represent a percentage of the people. And it just so happens that in the vast majority, again, of European countries or the vast majority of other countries, these very bad people, whoever they are, again, whether they be the heads of state or people below them or people above them or the citizens themselves, they would lead everybody to believe that everybody who lives in their country agrees with everybody who runs their country. And that's just not true. That's never the case. Again, if we are in this for the long haul here, and we are along for this ride, then anybody who's screaming that they have it all figured out regarding the Iran situation, I would say does not have it figured out. If they're screaming about one angle or they're screaming about another, they don't have it figured out. I don't have the entire thing figured out either, but what I do know is that we were told about this operation years in advance. We were told about this Iranian operation back in 2018. That's a long time ago. It was in Q drops. You wouldn't find it in the mainstream media. No one hardly ever talked about Iran. They hardly ever came up. Other than, of course, listening to Benjamin Netanyahu scream at the top of his lungs that they're going to have a nuclear weapon and we have to do this and we have to do that. But you take away his ability to say those things anymore now that what's going on is going on. And like I said, if this involves taking Iran away from Israel as being Israel's pincushion, then that's a good thing. It doesn't mean that every citizen in Iran is going to agree with what's taking place. But they don't even understand what's going on in their own country half the time either, just like Americans don't know what's going on half the time in their own country either. And the hypocrisy, of course, is everywhere. But I wanted to read this one post on X, and then again it correlates with a Q post specifically. And it says the following. This is from Ultra MAGA Dean Erickson at 7th Dean. And it says, quote, "And so it begins, exclamation point, unquote. Defections are starting within the Iranian army. Interesting, because Q told us almost 8 years ago in post 1604 the exact same thing. At some point, military generals will act with the will of the people simply because their soldiers are those same people and have no choice." So here's what Q Post 1604, which was dated 6/27/2018, stated. It said, quote, "We stand with the good people of Iran who are currently battling their installed regime for freedom. True rule, the people have the power. Rise up and demand they be removed. At some point, military generals will act with the will of the people simply because their soldiers are those same people and have no choice. We stand with you. We are monitoring the situation closely. Stay safe. God bless. Q." Unquote. And then below that post, you have a video of what appears again to be a member of the Iranian army. I don't know their specific title or anything, but they're in fatigues. They're speaking the language. They're holding a picture of Khomeini, and then they're reading a speech, and they're basically saying again, "We stand with the people of Iran. The current war is not against the Iranian nation." He says it's a war against the bloodthirsty Islamic regime. He's army's duty. He says, "We, the soldiers of the national army, have joined the national movement." He says, "We ask others to also join this national movement." He says, "My life be sacrificed for Iran. May my life be sacrificed for Iran." And then again, he burns the picture of Khomeini. So this is happening. Point being, we were told about this a long, long time ago. Even General Kane openly said in his 40-some-odd minute statement with Pete Hegseth, when the two of them were talking the other day, he said operations like this take years to plan out. Again, let that sink in. It takes years to plan this out. This was not done on a whim. Even the confiscation of the oil in Venezuela was not accidental. That was perfectly planned. That was military timing. Again, it probably happened a long time ago, but we were shown that it certainly happened currently. And then where is that oil going and all that gas going? Well, it's going to us. It's flowing right into our country, and Donald Trump even showed everybody that that was the case by showing a Venezuelan boat off of the coast of Texas the other day when he was down there giving a speech. That's, again, it's right in your face visualization. It's a comm right in front of everybody's face. That's not accidental either. And then, of course, this gas and this oil is being used, of course, to fuel our planes and our helicopters and our jets and the whole thing that are going overseas. So, again, is it causing gas in our country to increase in price? Yeah, but that's also because the stock market increases during times like this also. People get a little panicked. They buy a little bit more. It's kind of ingrained in everybody's DNA. They don't just sit and think and, whatever. I mean, they run to the gas station, and rightfully so, get it while it's cheap. That makes sense. But even so, the price of everything might go up a little bit. And this is, again, typically what happens because ratings drives the narrative regarding all of this. It drives panic, and it drives the stock market also. Again, you've heard me talk about silver in the past. Just the other day, I believe it was Monday morning, silver prices were through the roof. I mean, the market on silver was up, I think, around $98. And then just within 24 hours, it plummets at least whatever it was, $10, something like that, $10 or $15. So again, a lot of silver is being used in the middle of all of this too, and that's going to drive the market also. But again, with all of that aside, there are other avenues and other places to listen to sort of give yourself some calm regarding the Iran thing. Again, I don't bother listening to Netanyahu on Sean Hannity's show. I don't listen to Netanyahu anywhere. Again, I try not to watch Fox News at all, other than maybe to tune in occasionally just to see what ridiculous stuff they're talking about. But again, I stay away from it because it can be overwhelming. And yes, it can be disappointing because at face value, it appears that it isn't what we want and it's not, it's not a good look. However, for anybody, I think, to pretend that they have it all figured out, I would say that that person is foolish. I certainly don't have it all figured out, which means why would a Tucker Carlson? Why would, a Catherine Austin Fitz? Why would anybody? Why would any of them know exactly what's happening here? I just know that Iran was specified in Q posts as being a serious problem. Deep state apparatus, deep state ties, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, the whole thing. And now all of that is going to hell right now and being exposed for everybody right now, which I find that to be absolutely fascinating. So I understand, too, the argument of Noahide laws. People yell about that, and they'll say, well, this is just leading us into a one-world Jewish government where they're going to have banking control over everything and this, that, and the other, and everybody's going to have to abide by their laws and increase the Abraham Accords for peace, and that's all Jewish and this, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, those are Muslim countries by and large. I don't see them, like I said in the last episode, inviting in drag queens anytime soon. Saudi Arabia geographically is one of the largest in the entire area, largest countries. Their government supports us 100%. All those other countries, again, support us, Kuwait, Iraq, you name it. So, again, I don't like that Israel is openly bombing other particular places, like places in Lebanon. Again, at least that's what we're told. Are they trying to expand their land? It's possible. I don't like that. But again, I'm not going to pretend to know all of the ins and outs. I just know that this is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on for quite some time, because there's even people saying again that this is going to escalate even further, that there might be particular, again, bombs that are dropped that are a little more serious than what some can imagine, and then that will create a further escalation. But all war is deception, and I don't believe the television. So, again, Donald Trump seems to be rather cool, calm, and collected throughout this entire process. Again, there's apparently been U.S. soldiers that have lost their lives, as the story goes. Like I said, if that's true, that's unfortunate. Same thing with any innocent person on any side. That's unfortunate. But again, this is what it is. It is a conflict, but it's a conflict, I think, to prevent a bigger problem down the line and to cut off serious deep state ties and deep state communication chains, again, involving both Mossad, CIA, all of it. This is getting rid of the old guard. This, again, was a Q post. You're witnessing the destruction of the old guard. I think this is part of it. And part of that destruction, of course, is the exposure of Hillary and Bill Clinton and their crimes against humanity, of which there are many. I want to start here. There's a lot to bring up with this, and this is important, and I'm going to spend some time on this because, ladies and gentlemen, I've waited a long time for this. A long, long time. And these depositions are not accidental. The timing of them is not accidental. This is being done to wake up an asleep normie population to all of these associations. Again, at face value, you would not be in a deposition like this, of this magnitude, if you were not guilty. You would not even be anywhere close to a deposition like this, let alone running around with a pack of lawyers on a consistent basis, let alone your whole life, which I'll get into here in just a minute, because I recognized immediately one of the female lawyers for the Clintons, and she is their head representative. But you wouldn't even find yourself in a seat like this if you weren't guilty. Again, I don't hate to bring it up, but there's a pattern here with this kind of human behavior. It's much like, again, the Jason Mers Title IX investigation in the town where I live. No mother and no child goes through the whole process of unfortunately, a rather short police investigation and an entire 10-month Title IX investigation if they aren't telling the truth. If the event that they describe in detail repeatedly didn't happen, that means that they're telling the truth. In moments like this means the Clintons are lying, because they're finding themselves in all of these legal situations, again, where they're having to testify under oath. And you wouldn't be doing that if you didn't have negative associations with serious criminals, of which they've had their whole lives, because it's not just their associations, it's them. They are criminals, and they're going to go down, and it's going to happen publicly. But this has to happen first to wake people up. Every single time that these two are exposed in any way whatsoever, the public gets more and more sour about both of them. Less and less people look at them as some kind of a victim, and they actually see them for who they actually are. Now, their female lawyer, the one that is on the screen to their right, well, to their left, but our right when we're looking at the screen, the black female, her name is Cheryl Mills. Her name was lost on me, and then I had to look it up. I said, okay, so who's the black woman who's legally representing them and blah, blah, blah. And as soon as it said Cheryl Mills, I went, of course it is. Of course it is. Because I put this out on X, and I'm going to read it verbatim, but as you hear this, and as I stated, her entire resume reads like a crime novel. It reads like she's a mobster, because they're all mobsters. And only mafia lawyers represent the mafia. So here's what I wrote. I said, Cheryl Mills is the black female attorney representing the Clintons during their depositions. She's been with them a long time, and she's as dirty as the Clintons are. She was the deputy White House counsel during President Bill Clinton's administration, where she played a key role in his 1999 impeachment defense, and counselor and chief of staff to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton from 2009 to 2013, managing the State Department's $55 billion operations and advising on major foreign policy initiatives, get this, including post-earthquake reconstruction in Haiti. Cheryl Mills, I'm going to sidebar here, Cheryl Mills is a criminal. It's obvious. She's a criminal. She's been going along with the Clinton crime family this whole time. They need to wrap her ass up and lock her ass up, period. It blows me away. These people love the camera, and they think, again, that their positions or their legal defense or I'm a lawyer, that all of that somehow deflects from any guilt that they have knowledge of or that they've been a part of, any crime. It's obvious they're all in on it. It goes on, it says, after leaving the State Department, she founded Black Ivy Group in 2015, a company focused on building businesses in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, what really goes on in sub-Saharan Africa? Business building or child trafficking, rape and murder, Bill Gates-related activities, etc., etc., etc. It's obvious. She currently serves on the boards, you guessed it, of BlackRock, Inc., iHeartMedia, and the Clinton Foundation. I mean, I'm almost speechless. I said she needs to be deposed too. She's guilty of knowing about crimes against humanity. Her entire resume reads like a crime novel. It does. They don't get dirtier than her. God bless. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. If anybody has BlackRock on their resume, that's not a good look. If you have the UN on your resume, not a good look. If you have sub-Saharan Africa business dealings on your resume, hello, McFly. If you had that on your resume, you wouldn't get hired by hardly anybody. But these people, it's a bragging right. It's an actual credential. They think it's a good look. Now let me mention this, because I think this is fascinating. You know me, and I love human behavior, and I love stupid people, and I love when they do particular things and they think they're getting away with it when they're not. They don't. Again, the synapses don't fire properly in these kinds of people, and thank God that they don't, because it's obvious to people like us. Throughout Hillary Clinton's entire deposition, of which I've seen, except for maybe like the last 40 minutes, like I said, she does a thing which is a pattern of rationalization, again, which I'll get into more specifically here. It does have a couple of different kinds of names. But she basically says the following. She says, I knew and talked with Ghislaine Maxwell and knew of her, but she was an acquaintance. And then she says, but I never knew who Jeffrey Epstein was, and I may have been in the room with him at one time, but I've never talked with him or about him. She actually says this, and she expects people to believe it. And then she says, I didn't know, and I don't think anybody knew about his behavior before all of their crimes came to light and they were convicted. She actually says that, again, and expects people to believe it. So here's what I asked Grok, just out of curiosity. I said, what is it called when a person rationalizes their association with a criminal by saying that they did not hang out with them after their conviction, but they did before? Therefore, there's no way that they would know or could have known about any illegal activity. It would be like if I said, well, yeah, I hung out with Jeffrey Dahmer, but that was only before I knew that he killed and ate kids. I mean, we got a cheeseburger every now and again, and we hung out from time to time and talked about babysitting, but other than that, I had no idea. There's no way I would have known, quote unquote. There's no way I would have known. There's no way anybody would have known. And I don't think anybody knew. But I certainly didn't hang out with him after his crimes came about and became known. Again, Hillary Clinton believes that that's a justifiable defense. So it says the following here. That approach that she engages in throughout the whole almost 5 hours closely aligns with a few related concepts that people often use to describe this kind of post hoc excuse or self-justification. This is most commonly a form of self-serving rationalization or post-conviction distancing, sometimes informally called, I knew them before they went bad, quote unquote, or pre-conviction friendship defense, quote unquote. The core idea is using the timeline of the relationship and the public revelation of the crime via conviction or arrest as a way to retroactively assert ignorance and deflect moral or social responsibility for the association. For example, there are key terms and concepts here. The first one, plausible deniability. This is the closest everyday political term. It refers to deliberately or conveniently structuring one's involvement so that one can credibly claim ignorance if or when wrongdoing is exposed. In this case, the person leans on the fact that the crimes weren't publicly known or proven during the friendship period to make denial seem plausible. Well, not really. She even said throughout her entire thing, her entire deposition, just again another sidebar here, is she openly said that she had no affiliation or knew very much about the Clinton Global Initiative, her own group. She didn't even refer to it as the Clinton Foundation, because they didn't change the name of the Clinton Foundation until after Trump was in office the first time. Then they changed it to the Clinton Global Initiative because they'd already been investigated and were and still are being investigated regarding money mismanagement and crimes against humanity and kidnapping and trafficking of children through the Clinton Foundation. So they actually believe that they can just, again, change the name of a company, start up a new 501c3, and they're fine. But she claims again, I didn't have anything to do with that. That was all my husband. I didn't have anything to do with picking people or making decisions. That was all my husband. You'll have to ask him. That's what she said throughout the whole thing. Now there's this one, willful blindness. Or it says, contrived ignorance or Nelsonian knowledge. A legal and psychological concept where someone intentionally avoids information that would make them culpable. If the red flags were present during the friendship, but the person chose not to notice or investigate because it was easier to maintain the relationship, then claiming, quote, I couldn't have known, unquote, becomes a form of this. The conviction merely makes the ignorance claim convenient afterward. The next one they list here is the neutralization technique from criminology, Sykes and Matz's technique for neutralization. Specifically, this could fall under denial of responsibility. It wasn't my fault, quote unquote, or I couldn't have known, quote unquote, or appeal to higher loyalties. Loyalty to the friend predated any knowledge of crime, so the association was innocent at the time. People use these to rationalize associations with wrongdoers without feeling guilty. Next, and this is a big one, because this is one I brought up, I believe, in my dissertation research. And it has to do with Albert Bandura's theory, or it's an expansion of Albert Bandura's theory on moral disengagement. Again, I used it in context with violence and conflict prevention in school environments. Do you have moral disengagement? You bet your ass you do. It says a broader psychological process where people justify or minimize their connections to unethical behavior. The timeline argument, quote, before they were convicted, unquote, helps disengage by reframing the relationship as innocent and shifting blame to the timing of the revelation rather than any willful overlooking of signs. Again, all the so-called people in the town where I live coming to the defense of a Jason Mers, principal of Talawanda School District, Kramer Elementary. There's no way he could have. I've worked with him for this many years. That's moral disengagement. He's a good guy. He's done nothing but help people. That's not an excuse. It's a rationalization. Same thing with Hillary Clinton. It says in public scandals, media, or online discussions, people often mock this exact excuse with phrases like, quote, I only knew the pre-conviction version of them, unquote, or, quote, hindsight's 2020, implying the claim is a dodge. And then, quote, they changed after I knew them, quote unquote, even when evidence suggests otherwise. Ultimately, it's a defensive self-justification that exploits the difference between private suspicions, red flags, and public legal proof, conviction. Many see it as weak because close associations often have contextual clues long before an arrest or trial, but the speaker uses the conviction date as a clean cutoff for plausible ignorance, unquote. This is what Hillary Clinton engages in the entire time. Case in point, this piece of audio. This is approximately 2 hours and 22 minutes into her deposition, and I believe it begins with Nancy Mace here asking her a series of questions. Even Howard Lutnick was brought up in this because she donated or received donations for her presidential campaign after 9/11, I believe, or before 9/11, whenever that was, for her presidential run from Howard Lutnick. And then she again brings up Howard Lutnick and how dare you criticize him because he had a lot of people die on 9/11. It's like, wait a minute. We can criticize anybody we want, and your associations are suspicious, to say the least. Give Hillary Clinton a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, thank you for returning this afternoon. Secretary Clinton, is your husband someone the committee should investigate?
My husband will be here tomorrow. You'll have a chance to ask him questions.
So my question is your husband someone this committee should investigate?
Ask and answer.
Apparently you are. You've subpoenaed him. He's going to be here tomorrow.
In your testimony before the break, you discussed why you believe President Trump should testify before a committee due to a, quote, pattern of behavior, end quote. You testified that a pattern of behavior warrants accountability. So I want to make sure I understand your standard correctly. The pattern of behavior you describe includes being held civilly liable, indictments, sexually deviant behavior, correct?
Yes.
In 1998, your husband was found civilly liable for sexual misconduct with Paula Jones and settled for $850,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
By your standard of pattern of behavior, should your husband testify before this committee?
He is testifying tomorrow.
On December 19th, 1998, President Clinton was impeached on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice, which directly related to his extramarital affair with Monica Lewinsky. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your husband was impeached for perjury related to sexual behavior, correct?
I didn't understand what you said.
Your husband was impeached for perjury related to sexual behavior, his sexual behavior.
He was impeached for several reasons, and then was acquitted in the Senate.
And your husband flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane 17 to 26 times, correct?
He made several trips with different legs on the trip, as I recall.
But he flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane
Yes, he
17 to
did.
26 times.
Mhm.
Were you aware that Secret Service was dropped on some of those flights?
That is not my understanding.
Where they were not on some of those flights?
That is not my
So
understanding.
your understanding is that Secret Service was on all of the flights that President Clinton was on?
That is
with
my
Epstein?
understanding.
By this standard of behavior, multiple credible accusers, including Juanita Broderick, who alleged rape against your husband was disbarred in Arkansas, lost his law license before the Supreme Court, flew on Epstein's plane dozens of times, visited Epstein's island.
That is not true. That is absolutely untrue.
Well, there's documentation in the DOJ files. I'm not sure you're aware, your attorneys have told you, but Jeffrey Epstein told one of the victims to lie to investigators, to lie that Bill Clinton was ever on Epstein Island. I can provide that document to you.
We would like that document, please.
Okay.
Yeah, counsel,
I can do
because
that.
actually the files say just the opposite. Epstein himself denied he was.
These are FBI notes from an interview with a victim, and I can get you the victim number and the case number and the files. These are notes from a 302
If
interview.
you'd like those, are you going to provide those now?
I don't. That's not my line of questioning. She brought it up, but I have a
I'm
document.
sorry,
I can get to
you're
you.
making a representation as to the facts.
I didn't enter anything as an exhibit.
But it's factually inaccurate.
No, I can give it to you later. I can go find the document, make copies of it, and give it to you this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Okay. By your standard of pattern of behavior, according to documents released by the Department of Justice, your husband appears in photos in swimming pools, hot tubs, aboard Jeffrey Epstein's private plane with unidentified young women. We came here today and told this committee that a pattern of behavior demands accountability, correct?
I said that I believe the committee should call anyone who had a substantial pattern and practice of contact with Jeffrey Epstein and his crimes before they came to light.
Does that include your husband?
And after they came to light. You're going to have a chance to question him tomorrow.
So I'll ask you again, by the standard you just set in your own words just now, does this standard apply equally to your husband or only President Trump?
I have said that my husband has been subpoenaed. He will appear. He will answer your questions to the best of his ability. But there is no evidence whatsoever of any connection with Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. And I think that will be obviously apparent in the questioning.
What makes you so sure of that then? I mean, he's photographed with...
Objection
No,
is to speculate on something that's not.
Yeah, it is so speculative. I mean, swimming in a pool, sitting in a hot tub, there are millions of people who do that without any improper behavior or certainly committing any crimes. So I
think most of the men are like your husband that did anything wrong? Why were they being surrounded by young women, giving them massages on Jeffrey's private estate or private plane? Are they all innocent then?
You know, you are making assumptions in your questions that have not been proven and I don't believe are provable.
Okay. Why did you wait 6 months to have this hearing today or have this testimony?
You know, I've answered that. I thought that given the way that other witnesses who were subpoenaed at the same time were being treated, that there was an unfair treatment of both my husband and myself. And I thought that, especially from my perspective, I had very little, if any, information to provide you, and that I could have done it in a sworn statement, and you could have moved on to depose somebody else who might have more information that would be beneficial to your
I have two more questions, then we're going to pass it to Congresswoman Congresswoman Luna, after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted, did it concern you at all that you had taken a substantial amount of money from Jeffrey Epstein?
That's an inappropriate assumption. I did not take a substantial amount of money from Jeffrey Epstein. So far as I know, Jeffrey Epstein contributed to the joint committee that was supporting my Senate race.
Which was how much?
I believe I was told $20,000.
And you don't consider $20,000 substantial?
I do not consider it relevant to me because I have no recollection that I ever knew that he gave any money to
So
the
you
joint
didn't talk
committee.
to your donors that gave $20,000 to your campaign?
My understanding of the rules back then is that there was no coordination between the committee and the campaign. So no, I have no recollection.
But that doesn't
of
mean
doing
you
that.
can't speak to your donors. That doesn't prohibit, the law does not prohibit you speaking to
But
donors.
I didn't know he was a donor. As far as I knew, he was not a donor until I learned this in
Did it
preparation
concern you
for
at
the
all that Ghislaine
testimony.
Maxwell was heavily involved with people you knew and were close to?
I knew people that I knew her. Yes, that's true.
And you just shrugged, you didn't want to look into it or
You know,
have any
nobody,
question
you know,
about it?
until her crimes were revealed and she was indicted and tried and convicted, I don't think people knew very much about at all.
And
what
then
she
how do
was
you know
doing.
Howard Lutnick?
I know Howard Lutnick because when I was senator on 9/11, the firm he headed, Cantor Fitzgerald, suffered the greatest loss of life. As I recall, something like 650 of his employees were murdered by terrorists that day. Howard Lutnick missed being a victim because he was delayed dropping
I know
his
that. I
child
asked him,
off to
you know,
kindergarten. You asked the question. I'm going to answer your question.
Now you're going to yell
This
at
was
me?
what I spent
You're
my
going to yell at
time
me.
doing.
I'm a
I
survivor
spent
trying to look out for other survivors, trying to
and
protect
I
them.
was taking care
You
of
waited
the
6
people
months
who
to get
lost
here today.
3,000
6 months,
lives
and now you're being
at World
defiant
Trade
and
Center.
indignant today.
You asked me
I
about
have met
Howard
with Epstein
Lutnick.
survivors. I'm a survivor myself. You have emails. You've denied that Jeffrey Epstein, that you tried to get Jeffrey Epstein to give money to you.
I did
but
not.
Howard Lutnick was
If
used
you
to
have an
get
email
money.
with me asking Jeffrey
I
Epstein
have
for
an
money,
email from Howard Lutnick sending it to
what's
Jeffrey
the question?
Epstein and his
What's the-
people to
I
raise
don't-
money
I
for
don't
you
know about-
for an event, an intimate event for you at his offices
Well,
at Cantor Fitzgerald. You're
look,
going to sit
if
here
you-
today
if you would let me finish.
obfuscate and say to this committee, you didn't try to get money from Jeffrey
I didn't.
Epstein when
I
there was
didn't.
an intimate event in an email that Howard Lutnick emailed to Epstein's people and Epstein to get him to come to your intimate event at Cantor Fitzgerald, a very small event. And so I'm not going to put it. You want to yell at me, that's fine, but I'll yell right back.
Well,
okay? I am looking out for
it's
survivors.
very-
I'm doing
look.
the job that you would not do and refuse to do as Secretary of State. Thank you, and I yield back to
No,
Congresswoman.
I'm going to finish answering the question, which I have a right to do. I am very sympathetic to your personal situation. I have read about it. I have seen you testify or speak on the floor about it. And I very much sympathize with not only what you went through, but appreciate your effort to stand up for survivors. I was a senator representing the people who were murdered on 9/11. Nobody lost more people than Howard Lutnick. You can say whatever you want. You can call him and have him appear before the committee. But I knew him as the man who lost the employees that he knew intimately, including his brother.
And he was
So I worked-
you and
Let her
Jeffrey
finish
Epstein
her
raising
answer,
money
please.
for you.
Let her finish her answer.
You know what? If you don't want to hear what emotionally affected me, that's fine. But that's why I know Howard Lutnick. I went to the memorial service every 9/11 after the formal service was
I
held.
see what you're
with
doing here,
all-
and you're
with
obfuscating
all
from
of
the
his
questions. He was
people, the
go-between
families.
between you and Jeffrey Epstein raising money for your
Well,
campaign.
you know, Howard Lutnick and I did
Thank
work
you. I will
together
now yield
because
to
we had a
Congresswoman
lot of
Luna.
victims
Thank you.
to take care of, and we worked together to rebuild downtown Manhattan. That is how I know Howard Lutnick.
I love all of this. I love all of it. I'm having so much fun with this. You can't imagine. Again, I've waited so long for this. I love her testimonies. I love Hillary Clinton's testimonies. She's a case study in a psychopath. In psychopathology, she's it. I mean, it's perfect. I can't get enough. I can't get enough of this. She laid out everything that I just described with all of those characteristics of rationalization. She just laid it out. And there's another neat little thing. Again, it's a little observation, but as I'm recording and you're looking at an audio clip of Hillary Clinton, you know when she's about to start talking because, again, she just starts yelling. And the sound waves just go right to the roof of the sound bar. And it's like, uh-oh, Hillary's upset about something. And then, then she's off and running. She's behaved like this her whole life. Her whole life. She was kicked off of the Watergate Commission because she was cheating. She was trying to lie and break the law during that entire thing. I don't know all the history and the ins and outs behind it. I could certainly look it up. That's another time. But either way, she's been dirty that long. It's remarkable. And again, a couple of things about Nancy Mace. I'm not the biggest fan of Nancy Mace. However, no one gets under anybody's skin like Nancy Mace. She's a pit bull. And she will, again, go after somebody and not back down. And she asks some of the most direct and patronizing questions you can possibly imagine. And she elicits a response from these people. And that's good enough because the response implies guilt. It is, again, it's astounding to me. I love it. There is also this, and this is worth mentioning. Again, toward the end, certainly, you heard more of the rationalization with Hillary when she was saying things like, I care about people and all those victims, and Howard Lutnick lost more people on 9/11 than anybody else, and why would I not be sympathetic to human life? Again, it's a rationalization. When Lauren Boebert, Representative Lauren Boebert brought up Frazzle Drip and Pizzagate, she flipped out. Hillary Clinton immediately, again, she smiled and her lawyers went apeshit. Cheryl Mills went apeshit instantly. And one of the male lawyers next to her was like, well, that wacky conspiracy, that wacky story. They can use all the names they want. It's 100% real. It's 100% real. Again, bringing up Anthony Weiner's laptop, that got brought up too. But there was a particular technique which I believe only one individual used throughout the entire process, including, I might add, some individuals on the left side of the political aisle. But James Comer, the Republican committee chairman, used this particular technique, certainly after one of, I believe, their lunch breaks. And he was, again, basically buttering up Hillary Clinton. He was saying, we appreciate you being here. We really do. We have a lot of work to get to. We understand that. We don't want to be here, but there's other things that we need to do. You have a long, illustrious career in politics. You've worked with a great deal of people. You've done this. You've done that. It's a very specific technique that's called the Reid technique. And it's used in interrogations, by and large, since the 1950s. And it was apparently developed by John E. Reid, who was, again, a former Chicago police officer and a polygraph expert. And it was, I believe, also in collaboration, it says here, with a guy by the name of Fred Inbow. And it involves just that. It involves buttering a person up with their credentials to bring down any kind of a defense mechanism that they might have. And then that allows the individual who's being interrogated to basically say, see, I'm not a bad guy because you know all the good work I've done, quote unquote. And then they start to reveal more about themselves than they would than if they were just answering yes or no questions. Cheryl Mills, the female lawyer and even the male lawyer to Hillary's right, at no point did they verbally lean into her the way that Les Wexner's lawyer did when he leaned into Les Wexner and said, I'll fucking kill you if you answer another question longer than 5 words. Just answer yes or no. Now, what was happening is Cheryl Mills was writing on a piece of paper every now and again and putting it in front of Hillary's face. she was probably writing, keep your answers short, say yes or no, blah, blah, blah. It's possible that she was doing that because Hillary loves to talk. And she loves giving, again, long, convoluted answers. But again, the read technique was being used. And it, again, just to give some core concepts here, it brings in factual analysis like reviewing evidence and case details beforehand to assess the suspect's likely involvement, behavioral analysis interview, a non-accusatory interview to gather information, establish rapport, and observe verbal, nonverbal cues like body language, speech patterns, essentially to indicate, again, deception or truthfulness, and then an actual interrogation, an accusatory phrase used only when the investigator is reasonably certain of guilt. And this is the most controversial part and follows the famous 9 steps, quote unquote, designed to overcome resistance and elicit a confession. That's what Nancy Mace was doing. And again, Nancy Mace, it was either in that one that we just heard, I again, just played it, can't recall, but it was either in that one or it was in another one where she was asking her questions where she was saying, that your husband has been in pictures like this with other people as a married woman to Bill Clinton, which of course they're not legally married, or they may be, but they're not together and never have been. It's just been a show. But she openly said, wouldn't a normal married person be concerned about pictures like this? I mean, if you didn't know where he was and you're married and it just so happens he's in a pool with young women, wouldn't that bother you? But again, Hillary Clinton's not normal because their relationship isn't real. It's fake. It's a criminal relationship. That's it. They're criminal partners. There was also this that Hillary Clinton did before I play this next piece of audio. Hillary Clinton's a lesbian, by the way, if people didn't know that, according to even Bill Clinton himself. He's openly said that she enjoys women more than I do, and, you have to beat her off with a stick and that whole thing. Again, that's a long time ago, but anyway. With all of that said, or at the very least, she's bisexual. But anyway, there's a thing that she does too, and she does it throughout the entire deposition, where she openly says that from what she hears and what the other representatives tell her, is that there are other emails that have not been released, that there's a group of emails that have not been released, and that is concerning to everybody, that when it comes to transparency, quote unquote, all of the emails should be released. Why only some of them have been held back? Is it to protect certain people? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a trap that has been set for these people time and time again, and they're so stupid, they always fall for it. You get them to admit and beg for the thing that will incriminate them. And it's happening again, and they're doing it again. Any Epstein emails that have been withheld are the worst emails that have yet to be released to the public. Guaranteed. Whatever gets released next is going to be the worst thing you've ever read. It'll be far worse than code language, far worse than referring to children as jerky. It will be the most descriptive things ever. And it's probably going to be coming from the mouths themselves of the people who engaged in the behaviors. But you have the likes of Hillary Clinton begging for it. I think we need full transparency. I think everybody needs to be deposed, and I think every email should be released, and it should all be out in the open. Only a psychopath would say such a thing because they think they're going to get away with something. Now, with that said, I don't think a deal's been cut for Bill or Hillary or any of their associates. I think, again, this is just part of softening the future blow that is yet to come for the normies, so that when they say, well, Hillary Clinton's been arrested for child trafficking and crimes against humanity and money laundering and XYZ, people will be like, nah, that makes sense. Even some of her former supporters. But her former supporters will get real quiet too. Here's the next line of questioning that I want to play. And again, that line of questioning that I just played and this one aren't necessarily making the rounds. These were just ones that I found fascinating. There's going to be a million clips all over the internet. There already are. People are putting together highlight videos and the whole thing. But I personally like these clips in their entirety. So I'm going to play this next one, and this is a representative from Texas. He has to introduce himself to Hillary because Hillary doesn't know who he is. Give him a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Could you identify yourself?
Yes, sure. Pat Fallon, 4th District of Texas.
Pat Fallon. Okay.
Native of Massachusetts, but no one would vote for me there. I moved to Texas. So I'm a pretty simple guy. I just want to keep things simple and just ask you some questions and give you a chance to respond. So July 25th, unanimous oversight subcommittee voted to subpoena yourself and your husband. On the 25th of August, Chairman Comer issued a lawful subpoena, which I would think it's fair to say you didn't cooperate. There was a lot of delays. It was August. We're now in February. The deposition was set in December. Then it was delayed and moved to January. And now here we are in February. We all get accused of things. The higher you go up in the ladder, the more people are accusing things. If I don't have anything to hide, I'm eager to come in and testify. I just find that interesting. Why the delay for 6 months?
Well, I think, as I've said, we negotiated in good faith, and I believe the committee negotiated in good faith for a while because we thought, at least I'll speak for myself, that I could provide whatever information I had, which was not much, in the same form that you accepted it from former attorneys general and FBI directors who had much more direct knowledge or could have had much more direct knowledge about the investigation you were conducting. And I found it bewildering that I couldn't provide what I knew in writing under penalty of perjury as others had done.
Okay. I'd say better late than never. So I'm glad you are here. On the in September of 22, ABC program The View had you as a guest, and you were quoted as saying, "No one is above the law." Still agree with that?
I agree with that.
As do I. And I think Senator Clinton, that's why you're here.
I absolutely agree with that.
When did you first meet Jeffrey Epstein?
I never met Jeffrey
You never,
Epstein.
okay. All right. When did you first meet Giselle Maxwell?
I have
Elaine
no recollection of when I first
So
met
you might have met her, but you don't remember.
I do not.
Okay. So you'd obviously describe your relationship as pretty much non-existent with both of you.
Yeah, I had at least a casual acquaintance with her. I had nothing with him.
Okay. Would you describe your husband's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein as limited, cordial, close?
Limited for a limited period of time with respect to using his airplane.
Okay. And how about your husband's relationship with Ms. Maxwell?
I think that they knew each other for a longer period of time.
Okay. So just for the record, in 1992, Epstein donated $1,000 to your husband's presidential campaign. In 93, $10,000 to the White House Historical Association while you were in the White House and your husband were. And then he visited the White House, as we've said, I think ad nauseum 17 times from 93 to 95. And then in 99, a $20,000 donation to Senate campaign or an affiliate allied campaign. And then in 2006, $25,000 to the Clinton Foundation. And then post-Clinton presidency, your husband was on the plane somewhere in the neighborhood of 26 times. Right?
I can't vouch for everything you just said. I can't vouch for.
All right, but you're not disputing it vehemently. So
No, I'm not accepting it, but
Okay.
I can't vouch for it. I can't respond to it.
Okay. All right. In 2008, Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of 2 felony counts. Correct?
Were they felonies? I don't recall.
They were federal felonies, yeah.
Were they felonies?
For state felonies.
State felonies. Okay.
Felonies nonetheless. Okay. So just bear with me on this because, again, give you a chance to respond. Your husband ran for governor 5 times. The last time in 90 or 86, I think he got almost 500,000 votes. In 92, he got 45 million votes, 47 million in 96. When you ran in 08, you got nearly 20 million in the primary. And he was governor, you were senator, secretary of state, he was president. You've met hundreds of thousands of people, probably way more than the average typical person would. And my point here is all these millions of people that supported you and your husband, hundreds of thousands that you met. In 2010, one of the most significant events of your life is going to be your only daughter's wedding. You have 500 wedding guests from all reports. That means, and there's a groom involved, so you're distilling down to 250. Only 250 people can attend And it's your testimony that, how did Ms. Maxwell end up at the wedding?
She was the guest of Ted Waite, who was a longtime friend of our family.
So it was just an odd coincidence that she was at one of the most, no, I mean, that's fine. If that's your testimony, that's your testimony.
I was not telling my dates who their guests could, or my guests who their dates could
It's
be.
just an odd coincidence. Okay. See, would you describe your husband as a smart guy?
Excuse me, are you asking her to testify about her husband
I'm not.
instead of, because he's going to be here tomorrow, so you can
you
ask
think
questions to the witness
Ma'am.
that is for her, but it seems to me that you are asking questions that
Counselor,
are requiring opinion. Can you ask a question that is?
how long have you been married? Can I ask that?
Oh, do I have to answer that? 50 years.
He's a pretty smart guy by all accounts. Would you agree with that? Highly intelligent. I think he is. I didn't vote for him, but I think he
Then
is.
I will.
We're going to agree on
with
that?
your
I mean, I don't
opinion.
think that's controversial, Counselor, because everybody that I've ever met that has met your husband and has firsthand experience describes him as the smartest guy in the room when you're in the room. Very smart, scary recall. Like if he meets you 20 years later, he remembers what you wore, what they were saying, which is a great tool and asset when you're a politician. I don't think that's so. With this great recall, I'm sure it served him well in his political career. So, I just find it surprising that in January 26, y'all sent a joint letter reviewing him where he asserted that he, quote, didn't recall encountering Mr. Epstein or any specific interactions with him while in office.
That was his recollection.
Okay. Well, even though we've established that he was in the White House, Epstein, I'm talking about 17 times, and there's a public report that there were personal tours given, not only the White House, but even the residence. And somebody that smart just happened not to remember any of it.
This witness can answer questions about her own declaration, about what she recalls or knew. Again, the president is going to be here tomorrow.
All right. Well, your client talked about patterns in practice. And Bill Clinton, her husband, said that he doesn't remember meeting Epstein during this time in office. Took trips with him or took trips on his plane to New York, England, Japan, China, Singapore, Bangkok, Brunei, Rwanda, Mozambique, South Africa, France, Norway, and many more. So it's really not a question of where they went together, but where they didn't go together. Do you know the colloquial name for Little St. James Island?
No.
It's Epstein Island. Okay, I'll refer to it in both contexts. To your knowledge, did your husband ever visit Little St. James Island?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Do you know who Doug Band is?
He worked for my husband, yes.
So by reports on the press, he was a key architect of the Bill Clinton post-presidency, a top aide, the body man, the fixer, counselor, and close advisor. Would you disagree with any of those?
He worked for him in a number of capacities.
About 10 years, 02 to 12, I think it was.
He worked for him. I don't know.
Give or take,
I can't
fair to say,
answer that.
give or take a decade?
Mm.
Okay. He's on the record as asserting that Mr. Clinton did indeed visit Epstein Island. Do you think he's lying?
Yes.
Okay, why would he lie?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
Okay. And then, Virginia, have you heard of Virginia? I'm sure you didn't meet her, but have you heard of Virginia Giuffre?
I've heard about her in the press
I
coverage.
didn't ever meet her.
Yeah.
She was a victim of Epstein. Tragically, she didn't survive. She's no longer with us. She testified under oath that she saw Mr. Clinton on Epstein Island 2 separate occasions. You think she's lying? Or at least
I have no information whatsoever that he was ever on the island.
Just trying to be fair. Why do you think that is? I mean, that's my question.
I'm not going to offer opinions.
All right,
I don't have any information.
Further to your point earlier about practices and patterns, now there's a third person, Steve Scully. Have you ever heard of him?
Who?
Steve Scully.
Steve Scully?
Yes.
I know of a Steve Scully who was at Apple.
He was an IT contractor on the infamous aforementioned island. He also asserts that he saw Mr. Clinton, and this is a quote from him, lounging around the porch area of Little St. James Villa. It's just oddly specific. Do you think this third person was lying as well?
I don't know information about
You'd
Mr.
see how
Scully.
that would, I wanted to ask you that because I find that odd. It's a pattern in practice, as you mentioned. Have you ever visited Epstein Island or Little St. James Island?
No.
Okay, so just to be clear, it is your testimony that, for instance, you never flew in a private plane, flew into St. Thomas Airport, and then didn't enter the terminal, but instead boarded a helicopter to Little St. James Island. You never did that?
I did not.
Okay. So Virginia Giuffre, who we just talked about, who we all found highly credible, I think, bipartisan, but in a bipartisan manner, stated that Mr. Clinton walked into Vanity Fair and threatened them and that they better not write an expose detailing the crimes of, quote, his good friend, Jeffrey Epstein. Do you find that troubling at all?
I find it not believable.
Okay. Let's turn to the current administration and president, because you said some pretty choice words of the administration and President Trump, aggressive and even some coupled with incendiary claims about President Trump and his DOJ. Is fair to say that you would not describe them as transparent?
I would not describe him as transparent.
Okay. How about you were an enthusiastic supporter of Joe Biden and Vice President Harris when each of them respectively ran for president?
I was.
Okay. Would you describe the Biden-Harris administration as an administration that was committed to transparency?
To the best of their ability.
Okay. You also asserted, and if I get this wrong, please let me know, that, or at least insinuated that President Trump was closer to Epstein than your husband, socially.
I think there's an enormous amount of evidence that goes back many, many years demonstrating their relationship.
Okay. Do you know how many times Jeffrey Epstein visited the Trump 45 White House?
I do not know.
By all accounts and evidence, 0. And how many times did he visit the Clinton White House?
I don't know.
It was 17 times. How much did Jeffrey Epstein ever donate to Donald Trump politically?
I have no idea.
It was 0. But we have established that he donated to either you or your husband or your committees $21,000. Not agree?
I have no information that is personally based about their relationship.
Jeffrey Epstein donated $35,000 to foundations. One was a $10,000 donation to the White House Historical Society in '93 when the Clintons, your family, was in the White House. He donated, and then there was that 2006 donation for $25,000, or 2006 donation to the Clinton Foundation. He's donated similarly to the Trump White House, never, no foundations either. How many pages of the Epstein files were released by the Oversight Committee in 2021 to 23 when the Democrats were in the majority?
I have no idea.
It was 0.
But there was also an ongoing investigation of, I believe, Ghislaine Maxwell during that time period.
So the answer is, I can share with you, is 0. How many pages did the Biden Department of Justice release from the Epstein files from 21 to 25?
I have no personal information. I have read that because of the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, that was not done, but I have no personal information.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was 0, and that ended quite a little bit ago now. There were no images and there were no videos. When you compare the GOP Oversight Committee when we took over in January 23 to present, there were 65,000 documents that had been released. And then how many videos? There was nothing under the Biden administration. There was no images as well. There's been 180,000 images, 2,000 videos, and now over 3 million pages. So when you compare them, it's an odd definition of who's transparent and who isn't. Last thing. We have established that there's a $20,000 donation that Jeffrey Epstein made to an affiliated allied campaign to get you elected to the presidency. Have you returned that or donated that? Once, like, he got convicted in 2008 of 2 felony counts. Have you ever returned that $20,000?
It didn't come to my campaign. I was not.
So you've never donated that to charity? That's $20,000.
I've donated many,
Would be good
many
to
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I'd like to know the facts in the record that shows that Jeffrey Epstein is donated to her presidential campaign.
No, it's talking about the Senate campaign, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
He was talking about presidential campaign.
Oh.
Yeah. 1998 was the Senate. You're right. I stand corrected. But yeah, I think that would be a nice gesture.
Money, associations, testimony from people who were on the island saying that her husband was there, but all of a sudden they're all liars. Again, the question when she was asked toward the end there, that your husband walked into Vanity Fair and told them to not publish a negative story about Jeffrey Epstein, her answer was, I don't believe that. I think they're lying. She could have said, I have no knowledge of that. I haven't heard of that. I didn't know that. But she didn't say that. She said, they're lying. See, that's where she steps in it. That's where you take it to another level of you don't believe the people who are reporting particular things. That's way above saying, you know what, I have no idea because I wasn't there. And also, I've never heard of that, but, whatever, I can't comment because I don't know. I mean, that's one way to answer, not her. They're lying. Well, what proof do you have that they're lying? Well, she just said they're lying. So that's her justification. When it came to Bill Clinton's testimony now, again, these are all patterns of human behavior among people who are panicked and worried and scared because of their associations with individuals, because guilt by association is a big thing. It also highlights both ignorance and culpability. I can't help but continuously think of the school principal in the town where I live. Same thing. Staff members ran up to the microphone during a school board meeting and said, he could never do that. You don't know that. When asked specifically in the Bill Clinton deposition, did he ever visit Epstein's Little St. James Island, Clinton responded no. He repeatedly denied visiting the private island or other Epstein properties, quote unquote, beyond a single visit to Epstein's New York townhouse. Apparently, he also emphasized having no knowledge of Epstein's crimes and stated, quote, or not quote necessarily, but stated that he would have reported Epstein had he had an inkling. Again, it would have been easier for him to say no, but instead, he takes it to the next level. And he says, had I have even thought of that, again, total rationalization and distancing himself, I would have done the right thing, the legally responsible thing, which is report him immediately. Who believes that? Now again, what do you think is still being hidden by the DOJ? Videos and pictures of Bill Clinton on Epstein's Island? Videos and pictures of Hillary Clinton on Epstein's Island? Emails describing being there? Both of them, one of them, many others? Probably. It's probably a little, if not all of the above. This is not going to work out for them. Even Bill Clinton said the same thing. I want full transparency. More people need to be deposed, and we need to release everything for the whole public, 100%, blah, blah, blah. Right. He's going to wish he didn't say that. I'm going to end this with 2 Q drops. There's Q drop 854 on March 6th of 2018. Again, the date is interesting. Here's what it says, and this is the first line which matters, and then I'll read the rest. The first line says, is the stage set for a drop of HRC? And then it has 3 pluses, a space, a plus, a space, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pluses. And then in parentheses, it says raw vid 55 EX-RVID 5774, period. The pluses, as some people again have alluded to, is that sentence is referencing the Frazzle Drip video, which is allegedly Hillary Clinton eating the skin off of a child's face, a female girl's face, with or without Ghislaine Maxwell there also. So the pluses, the 3 pluses, a person again is referencing this, claiming that the pluses all state or all spell out and a child. That that the sentence again says, is the stage set for a drop of HRC and a child, which again the pluses would spell it out numerically anyway. Raw vid 55, and then what appears to be a file name. And then the Q post continues and says, we have it all. Reread regarding stage. The nail in many coffins. Liberal undo is in bold and in kill brackets. Impossible to defend is in bold and in kill brackets. Toxic to those connected, in bold and in kill brackets. We must work together. We are only as strong as your voice. You must organize and be heard. This is why they keep you divided and in the dark, weak. We are here to unite and provide truth. Dark to light, evil surrounds us. We are fighting for you. Where we go one, we go all. The choice to know will be yours. End in kill brackets, Q, unquote. That's post 854 from March 6th of 2018. Interesting timing. Then there was this one, post 2903 on February 26th of 2019. An anonymous person says, feeling like Anons in U.S. will be up late tonight following POTUS/Q in Vietnam. And then Q responded and said, it's going to be historic, planned long ago, minus 21 in kill brackets. Within the next 21 days, big happenings are going to take place, Q. Again, February 26th, 21 days from now. There's certainly a lot going on right now, is there not? And by the way, just for reference sake, just bringing this back very quickly to Iran, and then I'm going to move on to some education things here, of which I have one piece of audio. Not many education stories, but I have one very interesting piece of audio having to do with Anisa Liban. But what Trump is doing right now is he's using the War Powers Resolution Act. And this is, again, the War Powers Resolution of 1973, to be precise. This gives the president the power to do what he's doing now without Congress's intervention. He has 60 days, basically. He had to warn Congress in writing within 48 hours, basically introducing this and the hostilities that are taking place in XYZ. But forces must be withdrawn within 60 days, plus a possible 30-day extension for a safe withdrawal. Again, what he's doing is legally sound, and he's, again, allowed to do it. So anybody screaming at the top of the lungs that he's not doesn't understand that particular act, which is unfortunate because, again, anybody can look this information up. One final Q post I want to toss into the hopper here, and again, this is another delta just from today as I'm recording this March 3rd. This was from, again, March 3rd, 2018. But it was post 833. It very simply says, and this is as relevant today as it's ever been, reality is labeled a conspiracy. You are made to feel crazy. You are told to obey. You are sheep to them, pawns to be sacrificed. Remember, we are winning. Do not trust what you read. Mind warfare. Up is down, left is right. Boom. Q. Seems relevant again. Now, yesterday also, as all of this was being released, actually it was before all of this was released, Melania Trump was at the UN and she was giving a speech on behalf of America, and she had President of the United States in front of her on a placard, which I thought was kind of interesting. But anyway, there were approximately 20 people in the room, give or take, certainly around the sort of half-circle table that they were all sitting at. Different representatives from different countries, and they were there speaking again about education. And they went around the horn, and a lot of it was bureaucratic, and unfortunately, again, they were bringing up other events and basically just getting everybody's take on the record about a commitment to education, so they say, and we have to care about the youth, in particular in war-torn countries, and make sure that they're still getting schooling and they have access to safe technology that isn't surveilling them and blah, blah, blah. I'm not quite sure how to analyze the entire meeting, other than it seemed to be kind of a bureaucratic mess, unless, of course, it was designed to get everybody on the record saying that children are going to be safe and technology is going to be safe and all of that. Again, it could have just been a basic political show. I'm not sure what'll come from it, but you know my take when it comes to technology in school. Again, it's been removed for the wrong reasons. It's been implemented for the wrong reasons. The surveillance, of course, of the Chromebooks and the cell phones themselves and all of the technology mess that exists within these school environments is too much for even the people who work within to handle. So Again, I'm glad that certain laws have been passed where you can't use images of minors for pornographic purposes. Again, you would think that that would already exist on the books, but fortunately, again, with Melania Trump's intervention on some of that and the testimony from some of the victims, that's now become law in the United States. That's a good thing. But yeah, I don't really have much else to offer beyond that particular meeting. I listened to, again, the speeches from the other countries, and they were bringing in their own self-interests. And they were saying things like, again, for example, the delegate from France was like, well, it's just terrible what's happening in Ukraine, and we need to make sure that Ukrainian kids have access to technology and they have the freedom to not be bombed and listen to air raid sirens while they're trying to learn in a school and this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's common sense, but getting rid of the bad guys in Ukraine is a good idea too. Because again, they're bad guys over there and that's what's happening. So, I don't know. It was just it was kind of self-serving from the part of everybody. And then at the end of everybody's speech, Melania Trump, again, bless her heart, would just say, thank you for your testimony. And then she would move on to the next person. Thank you for your testimony. And then she'd move on. So, yeah, she's getting these people on the record to say particular things that they're going to do or not do. But every speech was basically just bureaucratic in nature. So I don't know what else to add. I'll just kind of leave it at that. Yeah, I don't like technology in school. It's destroyed it. It had its purpose, certainly from like word processing standpoints and learning how to type and accurately search the internet and things of that nature. But and even again, using cell phones as security devices to protect children and highlight illegality. I love all of that. The problem is that it's being stripped away from students and it's not being taught to be used properly by the people who work within, and that's a shame. So, with that said, there is now this. This was noticed by me, I should say, on an X account, which is No Taxes for Westerville, Ohio, and this specifically has to do with Anisa Liban. Again, the X account specifically is at Taxpayers WCSD, which is, again, their title is Taxpayers for Westerville City Schools, and they said the following. Listen, they said, Westerville resident calls in to local radio show to ensure Ohio Treasurer Robert Sprague is aware of the Anisa Liban school board scandal. So the radio show is Real and Raw with Mindy and Boots. And I'm going to play the portion where the caller calls in because Robert Sprague, our current treasurer, he's been a lifelong politician by and large, and I believe he's running for Secretary of State. I hope he doesn't win, only because he's been asleep at the wheel, and again, he's a politician. That's his job. But he's told about this situation with Anisa Liban, and the female co-host of the show, she also engages in this willful distancing and ignorant rationalization. She seems concerned, but she basically says the very cliche line of, well, I've lived in Westerville my whole life, and I can't imagine something like this happening. Again, who says that? Do people not know that illegality happens in every village, town, city, county, state, nation, continent? Do they not know that? Are they unaware? And the answer is yes. They have this convoluted utopia of where they think they live. Like no illegality would transpire. like people aren't dirty. Like there's no crime where I live. These people are crazy. But either way, this caller calls in and you'll hear Robert Sprague's answer and he's like, I haven't heard of that, but that sounds really concerning. Uh-huh. And then what's funny is this. He references the exact outlet online through the Secretary of State's office where you can report this kind of fraud, of which I've done at least 4 times. I have the case report numbers to prove it. And as I said on a previous show, and as I told Robert Sprague on X, look at your inbox, bro. The fraud's right there. So the good thing is, the walls are closing in on our favorite Somali, Anisa Liban. She'd better get on her camel and get out of town, because trouble's a-coming. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Hey,
we want to ask you, before Boots goes to this question, we do want to ask you how the financial situation looks here in Ohio since President Trump has gotten back into office. But there's a phone call. Boots, you want to
yeah,
set it
let's
up?
do the phone call. Let's go to Jeff. What you got for us, Jeff?
Yes, sir. I thank you for taking my call. I didn't know how the treasurer operated with regards to overseeing or investigating elections. We had an interesting school board election here in Westerville last year, where Anisa had filed her returns and then pulled them back and changed them and put them back out. And she raised like 15 times what everybody else did with a lot of out-of-state money. And then now all the names and addresses have been taken off her submitted finances for her election funding. And we've been asking the city and the school board and her for insight into why she rescinded and changed her finances with Minneapolis and Washington and Oregon money. And nobody seems to want to look into it or answer our questions. Does the treasurer have anything to do with that or can help out at all?
Robert, did you hear that question for you?
I did. Well, first of all, here's what I'd like to say about that. We've had problems with, financial reporting for years in terms of our elections and making sure that people report things accurately. Now, I'm not familiar with the specific case that you're talking about, but we simply, we want people to follow the rule of law. I believe in upholding the rule of law. I believe in upholding the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the state of Ohio, and within the Secretary of State's office, there is a brand new division called the Ohio Election Integrity Commission. And it used to be separate and now has been subsumed by the Secretary of State's office. And they are putting in place a streamlined process, a tribunal, that you can get answers for questions like these. And so I think and I'm not, again, I don't know the exact situation in Westerville, but that is absolutely something that needs to be reported, not just to the local boards of elections, but to the Secretary of State's office to make sure that it's filed with the Ohio Election Integrity Commission. And I know that program is still being constructed as we speak. But when I'm as Secretary of State, as the next Secretary of State, we are going to put a real focus on this because it's not just the campaign finance reporting that needs to be looked at and enforced. It's also the electioneering. It's also people who are voting multiple times, and even the reports that we have about ballot harvesting in Ohio, which is illegal. All these things will fall under that Ohio Election Integrity Commission that is now going to be run by the Ohio Secretary of State. So
well, I tell you
I would suggest, sir, that you make sure you report that. It sounds like that is very important to make sure that that's reported.
Yeah, that sounds so shady, Jeff, especially if there's documentation.
Yes.
And I live in Westerville. I hate to think that happened there.
Yeah, it's actually been posted online, and it's very easy to see. And we've asked her directly, and we're not getting any recourse. And it'd be great just for transparency and clarity.
Yes.
If everything was fine, it'd be great for the city to know.
Jeff, my understanding is she's Somalian, correct, or something like that?
That's what I'm to understand.
Okay, so they're going to say you're racist, and then they'll back you down into a corner. So keep up the fight. I don't think color or year, make, and model of any human being has to do with anything anymore. But what they do is when they cheat in different things like this, right away they play that, and then we have to back off because then we're hated. So don't back off.
Yeah,
what I'm
that's the
asking.
beauty of numbers. Numbers don't lie, and numbers don't care about color, right?
Exactly.
So,
I don't care.
So I would definitely report that because that's shady as crap, and I hate to think that happened in the city that I've lived in almost all of my life since I was 4 years old.
Wow.
We're so glad that you called in, Jeff, with that question for State Treasurer.
Thanks for taking my call. We'll follow his direction.
All right.
Yeah, that's great. So, Robert, kind of alarming news that we just heard right there.
Again, the conversation shifted after that, but there you have it. Again, that's what has to happen. People have to call into these radio shows. They have to get online. They're emailing Westerville, and Westerville's apparently providing no answers back because it's illegal. Because school districts are criminal organizations, and they're covering this up because it's illegal. Not complicated. She needs to go to jail, and so does anybody affiliated with the Westerville City School District who has direct lines to her and is allowing this to happen. They need to report this. Their own board members and treasurer are supposed to be reporting this. And a failure to report this kind of illegality is illegal. I don't understand why this is complicated for the people who live up there. I understand they're brainwashed. I get it. I understand it's a school environment, and our precious school environment is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they would never. I get it. I get all the rationalizations. It's illegal. The actions are illegal, the behavior is illegal, and it's, again, money laundering. You're taking money from taxpayers from other states that's being laundered through fraudulent organizations and companies, and then it's being donated to you. There's nothing more suspicious, ladies and gentlemen, than being a school board member in Ohio and receiving money in the thousands from a healthcare, daycare, childcare center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, let alone a taxi driver in Seattle, Washington. One final note here, and probably what I'll do actually is send that radio show my Substacks so that they can actually read them. Assuming that they're reading people, they might not be, but who's to say? I'll email them and let them know. Anywho, one final thing here. This is from SCOTUSblog.com. Court sides with parents in dispute over California policies on transgender students. Supreme Court on Monday night granted a request from a group of California parents to reinstate a ruling by a federal district court that prohibits parents in that state from, quote, misleading parents about their children's gender presentation, unquote, and that requires schools to follow parents' instructions regarding the names and pronouns that children use there. In a 7-page order, the majority explained that the parents were likely to prevail on their claim that California's policies violate the parents' rights to freely exercise their religion and their right to, quote, direct the upbringing and education of their children, unquote. Justice Elena Kagan and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson dissented from the court's ruling. She argued that Monday's ruling, quote, shows not for the first time how our emergency docket, can malfunction. This dispute dates back to 2023 when 2 teachers sued the school district seeking an exemption from their district's policies regarding gender and pronouns. They were later joined as plaintiffs by parents whose children socially transitioned at school or who were believed that their children socially transitioned at school. District Court ruled for the challengers, but the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit put that order on hold while the state appealed. The challengers then came to the Supreme Court asking the justices to intervene, and in a mixed ruling on Monday night, the majority handed a victory to the parents, but turned down the request from the teachers. Again, the state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen. You send your kids to school, you think they're going to get an education, joke's on everybody, that's never going to happen. And then, of course, they start to play all of these social engineering games because they themselves are brainwashed. So they show up and they say, everybody's allowed to use whatever pronoun they want, and oh, by the way, as a school teacher, you have to adhere to it. You have to use the he, they, she, them, zer, z, xyz bullshit stuff. And if you don't, you could lose your job because then you're being insubordinate. Well, not anymore. Not anymore. At least not for the meantime in California. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. I will leave it there for now, and I will catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.